Hey everyone, I'm here. This will be a fun one tonight. It's a big topic. Sometimes I bite off more than I can chew. This is a really important topic. I usually give myself about 5 minutes to prepare. That was just done in the beginning because I'm a perfectionist. I write huge books like this, and I check every word and every detail. And my wife was like, if you wait for everything to be perfect until you can write out your speech and memorize your speech, you're never gonna go live. This movement's just gonna die. And so I made a commitment. I said, I don't care what happens. I'm going to take 5 minutes, prepare a speech, and I do it, and I wing it, and it's a ramble. Sometimes it's crazy, and that's why you have to ask questions. But it was important to be consistent. I want to make an announcement very quickly. Things are going to change. I think I'm going to actually start doing live classes. It just dawned on me, so much of education, this was a little bit ago, is geared towards the children. I was like, it's the parents. It's the parents who are the facilitators. It's the ones that really need education. So I'm actually going to have some master talks soon on Blue Manor Academy. They're just geared towards you, the parents. It's like coaching. And it won't be any extra to just be part of the master talks, but I'll take more time to really organize my thoughts, and they won't be rambles. And I feel bad for this one today because we're talking about family. Family's probably the most important thing. In this next book, we haven't talked about family yet, okay? We're getting there. The next book is Power. One of the powers is family. We talk about how the evil has its own bag of tricks. There was recently this book written, it was a few years ago, I guess, but it's the 48 Laws of Power, and it's just this Machiavellian kind of evil. After you read it, it's just dirty. It's evil's bag of tricks, and they call it power. But really, God has given Christians, his own righteous followers, true power, and one of those powers is family. It doesn't seem like it anymore because it's been mostly dismantled. It's been turned against itself. Power or the family has become something almost of a weapon. It's almost become terrible, and it's because it is so powerful that when it's used for evil, it's very destructive. But used properly as God intended, family is one of the most powerful forces in the world. And we're going to talk about that really quick tonight, but I don't want to do a disservice to it either because it's such a huge and important topic. I think family, how in this book, character, if you've read it, discipline was like 70 pages or something because it was so important to understand discipline, and it was so nuanced in our culture today. So many misunderstandings about discipline. Well, in this next book, probably 25% of it will just be on family, and it's going to be things that hopefully you haven't even heard before, and we're gonna reestablish the power of family. And the reason I wanted to talk about family today is it was in the news. It seems like there's been an attack on the stay-at-home mothers and wives lately. There was an anchor in, I guess it was in Alaska, and she was just mocking the stay-at-home mom. This mom was talking about how she wakes up early with her husband, and she lays out all of her kids' clothes, and then she wakes up early with her husband, and she makes breakfast and coffee for him, and basically she just loves her husband. And if it had been, and she's a feminist, this news anchor, so of course she hates this. And if it had been a husband talking about how he wakes up early, makes coffee, they would have loved it. Or how he gets up early and he shovels the driveway because he wants to make sure it's all cleaned out for his wife. Nobody would have complained, okay? But this is a woman, and feminists are rabid. They hate the traditional woman. They hate the housewife, the wife. They hate that title at all. They hate the mother. This goes back to the French Revolution, communism. We're going to talk about where that hatred comes from. It's part of the New World Order's agenda, but they hate the traditional mother. Okay, so I saw that, and they're disparaging this mother or this woman because she takes care of her kids and her family. And of course, this news anchor, I guess she's very important, reading her teleprompter. What she does is so much more important than loving her own family. Okay, so that's one. There was another one. I posted on her page. There was a feminist, and she was addressing this man who was talking about how he was lamenting his wife who finally had a baby. And this happens to all women. It's really sad. They get pumped full of feminism. I talk about that in this book, how babies are like the antidote to the New World Order. And there was this mom, and she's pursuing a career. Sorry, she's not a wife. She's a wife. And they're two ambitious couples, and she's pursuing a career. I guess she's making good money. She makes as much as her husband. And then there's a little hiccup. She has a baby. They decide to have a baby. She has this baby, and then it just all goes out the window. All of a sudden, she realizes this is the most important thing. This is so much more important than my career. I think as a man, that happened to me too. You just think like, man, what a silly thing. It's like all these ambitions I have, like this is the most amazing thing that's in my hands right now. And it kind of distorts the agenda of the New World Order. So all of a sudden she wants to stay at home, and this father, he's a real winner. He's upset about that. He thinks his wife, who wants to take care of his child, is being unambitious, and she needs to get back to work because he likes to buy stuff with her money, and they can't take as many trips. Okay, he doesn't value his children as much as she does, and that happens a lot. Where I know all of these women, everybody. They all went to college and they all want these high-powered careers and everything. As soon as they have a baby, it's all over. And they realize, like, this is my purpose. And feminists are made, to try to make people think that that's degrading. How dare you say woman's attached to motherhood? There's nothing more glorious than being a mother or father, raising your children. It's not degrading. It's certainly not degrading. Take care of your own children. So anyway, I just saw that and I thought, we need to address the family thing. This book is going to be another year in coming, my book on power, but I really wanted to just address it today, touch base, what you're dealing with when you talk about family. You're not talking about a loose association. It's not just this religious thing. It is the very nature of our existence. It goes all the way back to Genesis. This is probably one of the most profound things in the Bible. In the beginning, we have one God, and this one God is talking to himself. If you can fathom that, the Trinity, right? And he says, let's make man in our image, okay? Male and female, but he's talking about a singular man. And he says, let's make man in our image, male and female. So he's talking about the plurality of man and woman, and he's talking about a single entity of man. And we don't mean the male gender, we're talking about humankind. So humankind is already kind of this binity, okay? It's two in one, and that's how God designed it originally. We're not individuals the way the feminists, which is part of the communist New World Order movement, okay? It's evil. It was never about empowering women, but it was about setting the two against each other. But they promote individualism. Woman's an individual. No, she's not. She's part of this binity that was created by God, which reflects his own glory, his own Trinity. And you have this binity. And then if you read the teachings on the Trinity, it's very deep, it's very profound. But basically, while it's still a mystery, we believe that the union, that God is love, and the union between the Father and the Son, which again, these are spiritual things. It doesn't mean the males, okay? It's just an analogy or a type. The union between the Father and the Son comes together and creates the Holy Spirit, which is love, which is like the love God, which it blows your mind. But you have these three gods, they're all one. You can't figure out where one stops and one ends, and yet they're distinctly separate. Well, God creates man in our image. That's how he created us in the image. We have a man and woman, which are one. The woman even comes out of the man's flesh, so we are one in flesh. It's hard to even say where our spirits start and stop. And then you have the union of the man and woman in marriage, holy matrimony, and from that they create a third person. So out of the love of the man and the woman, they reflect God's Trinity and they create a third person, a child. And it's a miracle. It's mind-boggling. Where does the child begin? And this is the advocate, the abortionists. They say, well, it's part of the woman's body, or it's just a sperm, or it's just an egg. It's not. It's not. As soon as it comes together, it is. It is merely the man and woman's flesh. They somehow come together, so you can't distinguish like, oh, that's the child's flesh because it comes from the parents. And yet, as soon as it comes together, a third entity is created, which has its own personality, and yet it came out of the man and the woman, just their flesh. And where does the spirit come into play? It's like out of their spirit. I mean, it's a mystery of mysteries. But our humanity reflects the glory of the Trinity of God. So you have a man and a woman, the binary, and they create when they come together in love. That's what it's supposed to be. They come together in love. They create the Trinity, and now you have a third person who is literally both of you and neither of you. It's a mystery of mysteries. It's a powerful thing. And we talk about educating our own children. You have to understand, this is not about teaching children to read and write. Okay, anybody can do that. A public school can do that, okay? But you have a connection to your children, a spiritual, biological connection. You are connected through DNA that the schools can never duplicate. It's a strange thing. Nobody will understand or love your child like you will. It's a mystery. We don't know why. It's something we just can't comprehend, but there's a connection there. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with something that's glorious, that reflects God's glory. And when we think, oh, we're created in God's image, we think, oh, we're intelligent, or maybe. I mean, we're more intelligent than the animals, but are we close to God? Probably not. But really, he says, let's create them in our image. Let's create them male and female. He's talking about the Trinity. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with, something very powerful. And I want to talk about how powerful it is. I don't think people realize this, okay? And family has always been a thorn in the side of tyranny. It's always been the antithesis of slavery. It's always been trouble for dictators, and of course it's trouble for the New World Order. And it's because it's impossible. As soon as a man and woman conceive this child, they love it and they're loyal to it, and there's a loyalty from the child that's natural to the parents. They will die for each other. It's God's order. It's his order of government on this planet. And this love and loyalty is unbreakable. In fact, many people have tried. We have examples throughout history where the Pharaoh, for example, with Moses, Pharaoh sees how powerful the Israelites are becoming. And he's like, dude, we got to kill these babies. We're going to kill all the firstborn boys. We're going to kill the baby boys. Why? Because they're not Egyptians. They're a different, I don't know if you'd call them a race, they're a different family. They come from their Israel, their father, and really from Abraham, right? This line. They are a family. Their loyalty lies in the family. They are a threat to the Egyptian empire. And that's true. They're a threat. I think he did something very wicked, but he recognized this is a threat at our doorstep. It's a different family line. It's growing more powerful than our own. And if we don't snuff it out right now, it will consume us. And so he kills all the first born baby boys. Because, of course, the males are going to be more of a threat. So he kills all the firstborn baby boys. And then you know the story. There's this little boy. His mom, again, she loves him. They're not going to, these Jewish mothers are just they're not Jewish. Israelite mothers are just thwarting the Egyptians. They're trying to hide their babies. And one of these mothers, she has in faith, she puts her baby in a basket. This is faith in God, that God will take care of him, puts him in a basket. This baby floats down the Nile, ends up going right into where one of the Egyptian princesses is bathing. She takes this baby in. This story goes, tradition goes, I believe that she had just lost a child, so it's like a miracle. She adopts this child, Moses, to be her own, but it's not really her child, okay? It's from the Israelites. That's his blood. That's his spiritual connection, right? To his own mother. They raise him as an Egyptian prince. He's raised up to be Egyptian. He's adopted. He's educated. He follows the Egyptian gods, all of this stuff. And then at some point, after all of that, think about that. This is how powerful it is. After all of that, he still, when he finds out he's an Israelite, he betrays his Egyptian family. He sides with the Israelite gods. He sides with his Israelite people, his people. They didn't raise him. They didn't feed him. They didn't clothe him. They just conceived him and put him in a basket. But that is his identity. It's his family. And so he sides with his people, and he leads them, of course, and he follows their God, Yahweh. So it's a powerful story. There's another one. This one gave me chills when I found it. This is probably the most amazing story. It's the story of King Cyrus. I hope your kids have read it. I'm sure they haven't. I've stumbled on this. It was like a miracle in college. I get this huge book. It's Herodotus' Histories. It's this big. I like flip it open to some random page, and it's like Cyrus. And I was just reading about him in Bible college. I'm like, oh, what cool, King Cyrus. Now, this is written from the perspective of the Greeks. And they're like, surely the God's hand was on this person. And if you know from the Bible's perspective, God's hand was on this person. And so it's crazy that these two different cultures with two different gods both recognize, like King Cyrus, the glory of God was upon him. Because his story is amazing. His father, actually I think it's his grandfather, has this dream that that this baby that his daughter's going to have is going to kill him and consume his empire. So he does something evil. When family gets evil, it's bad. He tries to kill King Cyrus, or the little baby. And he sends out his general. And his general goes out there and is going to kill this child. But he's like, man, I can't do this. And when the old grandpa dies, the mom's going to kill me. And this is the future king. I'm just going to leave it exposed out here or something. Or maybe, I forget how the story goes. He does that, but there's a shepherd out there. The shepherd, again, it's really weird. It's just like the story of Moses. The shepherd had just lost a child, so the mother is very maternal still, just like the Egyptian princess, and she wants this baby, and they find this baby, and they decide to keep it. And the general finds out about this, and he's okay, but he's like, don't tell anybody. It's just not, don't tell anybody. My life is on the line. Well, anyway, King Cyrus gets older, and it's a cool story. He's playing in the courtyard. He's got his adopted parents, but he's playing out in the courtyard, and he's a peasant. And he's playing with some noble children. And he takes over, and he becomes like the king in their play. And one of the noble children wasn't obeying him. And remember, he's a peasant. He doesn't know who he is. And he has the kid beat. And so the noble father's really angry and wants to have him beat or killed or something. I don't know. But he goes before the king. And so the king is like, okay, I'll get involved in this. And when he sees King Cyrus, he realizes, that's my grandson. Okay, so he's very upset. He doesn't say anything. He sends him back to play. It's a cool story. I hope I'm telling it right. There's so much to this. It's amazing. It's like God's hand was on this. So then he calls in the general. And he's like, oh, hey, man, I want to have a feast and everything. And you're invited as a guest. Send your son to the palace, and we're going to get him up in some doodads, and we're going to have this celebration, right? So that night, they're having this celebration, and the general's son isn't there. And after the meal, the king is like, hey, how is the food? And the general's like, oh, it's good, or whatever. He's like, you know who that is? And they open it up, and it's the king's son's, or it's the general's son's head in the pot. and they had killed his son and they'd fed it to the general. And basically the king is like, that's a warning, you crossed me, you disobeyed me, you would be punished. Horrible punishment. And the general wisely is like, if it pleases the king, if it pleases the king, we'll eat my son, no problem, no issues, right? My loyalty is to the king. He's my God, right? The king. Except this king has made a horrible mistake. He's crossed a family. And the family always has the deep loyalty. And this is going to destroy the king. You'll see. So anyway, he goes to his magi and he's like, hey, what do I do with this kid? And they're like, well, hey, remember that dream you had where he becomes king and stuff? Maybe that was just already happened, played out in this play, in the courtyard. Maybe it's not a big deal. Let him live. Okay? Well, King Cyrus gets older and he flees and he goes and raises an army and he comes back and he attacks his grandfather. So the grandfather's, he's sweating it. So he goes out there, of course, he should win. He's got a bigger army. He's super powerful. He's the king of the Medes. And these are the Persians that the Cyrus has gone and raised an army with. And they come in rebellion against their grandfather. And at a crucial moment in the battle, remember that general who got fed his own son? All of a sudden he turns, of course, and he leads his troop against the king and destroys his army. And then the king is just sitting there, in the dust. And he's like, yeah, you shouldn't have fed me my son, In other words, the point is that family is the ultimate loyalty. And this king thought through terror, he thought through his prestige as king, like this general will serve me. But that general loved his son, and you can never break that. It's the most powerful force in the world, family. And of course, it was the king's downfall to cross that family. Should have probably killed them both if he was smart. Okay, King Solomon. That story of Solomon is an interesting one. We talk about mothers. I really wanted to talk about this. There's this poem. I just put it on Blue Man Academy. It's the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. And it's talking about the power of mothers to shape their children. This is, of course, why we have public education, because the state, the New World Order, I don't even want to call it the state. It's not the state. Okay, it's a tiny group of elite families that run the world. They understand the power of family, and so they've created a public education system so that the state, which is controlled by them, rocks the cradle and will raise an adversary. It'll raise up your child to be an adversary against you. But it's still tough because you still have that loyalty, that biological trinity, that loyalty that your children have for you. So they're against each other. And the state has done everything in its power, the New World Order, to destroy your family, to make it dysfunctional. Everything in their power. And we'll get into that in a minute. But I just want you to know that many of the kings, we remember the kings, but we forget about their mothers who put them on the throne. So many kings were on their throne, not because of their fathers, not because of anything great that they did, but because of their mother's diligence, their mother's vision for their lives, their mother's education. One of those is King Solomon. King Solomon was an illegitimate son, born out of a lustful passion of Solomon. He sees Bathsheba bathing on a roof. She's hot. He takes her. He kills the husband. They have a baby. God curses that first union, that first trinity between those two, because it's unholy. And that baby dies. King David repents. And then God gives him another son, Solomon. And Bathsheba's still young and pretty. This is a horrible story, by the way. It's King David messed up big time in his old age, and Solomon's going to become a wicked king anyway. But Bathsheba's still the love of his life. She's young. She's beautiful. So while she's young and beautiful, she makes the king promise, hey, I want my son on the throne someday. And David's like, sure, anything, because you're young and beautiful. But eventually he puts her off, and he has younger, more beautiful concubines. But he swore an oath to her. Now, he's getting ready to die. He's getting older. And Bathsheba comes back, and she's like, she's an old lady now. And she's not no sex appeal that King David could be interested in, and he's old anyway. But she reminds him, she says, you promised me you'd put Solomon on the throne. He's your heir. And this is going to create a huge thing. And we're going to talk about this when family goes bad in a minute. But it's going to create this huge thing. And anyway, David remembers. He's like, yeah, I swore an oath before God. Solomon is the heir now. And Solomon becomes the king. It divides up his family. His own sons go to war with Solomon. And eventually, it'll split the empire. You're going to have 10 tribes that will go north after Solomon dies. They're not going to serve his son. And you have 2 tribes left, Benjamin and Judah. It splits up the nation. When you get family wrong, it goes really bad. And then King Henry VII, the famous War of the Roses. I hope you know that history. The War of the Roses it's one family. It's sad because it's like a family with 2 lines, and it becomes divided. And anyway, there's within one family, there's 2 families. The Lancasters and it's the Plantagenet family. I forget the other one. But anyway, there's like one family, but two lines. They both fight for the crown for a long time. And then this third guy gets it. Like he should have no running for the crown. These guys are battling each other back and forth. But there's this lady. She's Lady Margaret. She has a son, and she's like, it's her vision. She's like, I'm going to put my son on the throne. She does all sorts of things to get her son on the throne. Eventually he comes over. He's Henry Tudor. I write about him in this book, Courage. It's Henry Tudor. Henry VII, as he becomes, who fights Richard in that battle on Courage, which is a glorious battle. I use that as the example of courage. And Henry becomes king. And we remember King Henry, founder of the Tudor dynasty. Sometimes we forget his mother who put him there. She was definitely pulled the strings, gave him the army, set him up, and made him king. So mothers are powerful people. And then we talk about Christendom. We talk a lot, and this is on purpose. In the education system now, they talk about histories in terms of countries and nations and stuff like that. This nationalism was invented by the New World Order when they wanted to overthrow the monarchies and the Holy Roman Empire. So you had this huge empire, and they're like, we need to break it up. So we'll go to individual people groups, and we'll promote nationalism, which is so funny because they're against it now, because now they're trying to bring them all back together, New World Order. But they promote this idea of nationalism. And they're like, you've probably seen Sound of Music, one of the most glorious, beautiful works of propaganda. It's my favorite. I love The Sound of Music. But of course, in that, they promote nationalism because they're trying to break up the German reunification that Hitler's promoting. And so they're all about nationalism and being a patriot and stuff like that. And they promote this idea that you should be loyal to your state first, even over the family. And because they're trying to break up that monarchy. And what it was is Christendom was run basically all of Europe. Okay, we think of it as nations like England and stuff. It was run by a handful of kings, a handful of families. In fact, they were all intermarried. It was just a handful of families. In fact, in World War I, the Tsar of Russia, the Kaiser, the Emperor of Germany, and Edward, the King of England, they're all cousins. Unfortunately, they don't have any power because most of them are just kings. Well, at least the King of England's just a king in name at this point. Parliament runs the thing. And so anyway, it's really sad, but you have these three guys, the three most powerful empires, and they're all cousins. They're all related to each other. Christendom was run by just a few families. And when the New World Order comes to power, they are a few families too, but they need to break up the monarchy. So they do everything they can to attack the monarchy and talk about tyranny. And they tear down the monarchy, okay, and destroy it because that is family rule. That's family rule. And they're going to talk about patriotism and democracy and citizenry, and they're all equals, okay? And they're going to get this into our mind. And it really confuses us because we're still stuck on that last page, and we don't realize, dude, that was just the agenda they needed to topple the monarchies and Christendom. Now they don't believe in that anymore. Now they're going to try to consolidate power. And if you are nationalist, it's because you're racist and you're hateful. And because now they're trying to have globalism. They want to create a one world government, which they will rule. And it'll be run by a few families, by the way. It's just a handful of powerful banking families that are organizing this. But they don't want you to know who they are. So they want you to believe that you have a democracy, a republic. You are powerful. The people are powerful. So anyway, okay. So that's just talking about the power of family. I also want to talk about the salvation of family, how God's plan always works through families. It's very interesting. Like that is his mode. That is his form of government. With Adam and Eve, even after they fall, from the very beginning, the first family, they fall, they eat the fruit, and there's horrible sin enters the world. Cain kills his own brother. It's a disaster, right? But God promises Eve, Adam and Eve, he says, from your seed, from the seed of the woman, from your seed, this line, and actually, it's the entire line. The salvation will come. You'll crush Satan. You'll crush Satan. We know that's Jesus now, right? And it's really important. If you look at the Bible, I never understood this as a kid, but I get it now. I understand why circumcision was so important because they're remembering this is passed through a line. We can't just pick any wife. We have to be. That's another story. It's a long story. The importance of circumcision, but it's because God's going to work out his salvation through a specific seed line, and you trace that. After Abel is killed, we have, okay, this is the new line. It starts with Seth, and it's traced down the lineage all the way to Jesus. In fact, when Jesus comes in the New Testament, they've got these genealogies saying, hey, look at all the way back here. We've got this perfect line to Jesus. This is God's plan. He works it out through a family. Of course, we have the story of Moses I just told you about. God works through a family. This son he's had abandoned by his family by no choice of their own. He's raised by another family, but he's true to his family and his people. Really, it wasn't a race. The Israelites are not a race. Well, they are a race. We'll talk about race in a minute, maybe. But race is a family. So these are the Hebrews, the Israelites, the sons of Jacob, Israel, right? And he's going to be loyal to that. He's going to lead his people, his family, not his nation, his family. Okay, they're all related to a new land, and they're going to take down some other families. Okay, you have Father Abraham, of course, getting a promise through his seed, through his family. All the nations of the world will be blessed. You have the nation of Israel. The nation of Israel, like I said, is a family. It's powerful. You want to talk about powerful. The nation of Israel splits at one point. 10 tribes go away. There's 2 left. There's Benjamin and there's Judah. Basically, it's just Judah at this point. They're the larger, more powerful. That's the line of David. And Judah is Jew. Okay, they're the Jews. Of the tribe of Judah. They're going to bring the Messiah into the world, and then it's crazy. They're going to be overrun by the Romans and all of this stuff, and yet that family identity, even though it's strayed from God now, that family identity is going to persist, and they're going to come back together 2,000 years and found a nation again in Israel. That is the power of family. It's indomitable. It remembers. Even though they squabble so much amongst themselves, they have that identity that we are going to reunite in our promised land. 2,000 years later, you couldn't break it. It's incredible. The story of Esther. Esther is married to a Persian. She has no loyalty. I guess she has some loyalty to her husband and stuff, but not really. She was just kind of picked because she was beautiful. But she's, of course, a Jew. And the Jews, man, everywhere they go, they're going to butt heads with the new nation. And they're super loyal to themselves because it's a family. And Persia is made up of all of these different people groups and families, and it's just broken up. There's this intermarriage. But the Jews maintain their family identity. And when Esther's family is in danger, she's going to risk her own neck to save her family, even though most of them are strangers. And she's going to go before her husband, and she's going to petition for her family, the Jews, okay? And race, we talk about race. There's a huge movement in our world. This is controversial. I almost didn't want to talk about it, especially on a random talk. But race, of course, is family. If you look at like the Asian races, the race, they all kind of look the same and whatever. It's because you have this, without getting into it too detailed, but you have these families that kind of went off to different areas of the world after Noah. And they're going to marry each other's cousins and stuff like that. That was totally normal back then. Of course, that was attacked. That inbreeding and stuff was part of the Enlightenment to attack the Huguenot, or not the Huguenots. Oh, geez. I just went blank. That powerful family. The most powerful family. Oh, I just went blank. The Habsburgs, okay? With inbreeding and stuff like that, because they would just marry each other's cousins and stuff like that. And today we think, oh, that's so horrible. But man, they consolidated power. And guess what? The Rothschilds, who are promoting most of this anti-whatever propaganda against these monarchies, they did the same thing. If any of their daughters married outside of the family, their cousins and stuff like that, they would disown them. Basically, they would get no inheritance or dowry. Basically, that's the money that follows the daughter from the family. So they had to marry in the family to keep the power and the money in the family. That was the Rothschilds. So that's the concept of race. It was really family. And of course, with multiculturalism, we're trying to break down that family identity. And yet, even in America today, if we're honest, if we're allowed to talk about these things honestly, we still have that identity. You still have we call them African Americans, but the black race, and they still identify with each other. Universally, they see themselves as a voting bloc. You have La Raza and the kind of the Latino race or whatever. It's really a mixture of races. It's the Spaniards, of course, and the Indians who were here, but you still have that family identity. And even when it's in America, we've tried to mix it, but we maintain these family racial identities. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but it's certainly there. That's the origin of race is through family lines. Christ, of course, came through a family line way back when, but even him, he was put into a family. He wasn't put into a political organization or anything like that. He wasn't a powerful general thing. He was given to a mother and a father, very poor, but he was put into a family, the Holy Family, right? Joseph and Mary and the Christ child comes through a family. So God loves family. And of course, we talked about the Trinity already. God himself is a family. It's a Trinity. That's really what it is. And of course, we ourselves create Trinities. I guess we have lots of children and stuff, but really the Trinity is between the individual child and the two parents. That's the image of God that we create when we conceive a new child. So that's the history of family. Family, God works out his salvation through family. Families are super powerful. Families rule the world. You believe today it's about wealth, or it's about political parties and stuff like that. That's all nonsense. Families still rule the world. It's a handful of families that run America. The political parties, the representatives and stuff like that, they pick those people, they fund those people. Then we'd call this the shadow government, if you will. I don't mean the people who are working secretly in the CIA and all that stuff. I'm talking about the family, the ruling families. They're international, by the way. They're not American necessarily. Some live here, but they're internationalists. And they are the ruling class today. But again, it's family. It's just a handful of powerful families. Okay, so remember that, okay? And when we talk about the 4 subjects, I don't like Blue Manor Academy. Yeah, we teach math, we teach reading, okay? But those all fall under 4 categories: faith, family, finances, and fitness. Those are the 4 subjects of life that we need to be studying for, and we know very little about family. None of this stuff, I didn't understand Europe. I thought, none of it made any sense back in the day, because you think of England as a people, and you think of the French as a people. They're families. In fact, they're all connected to each other, okay? Families rule. Families are the most powerful force in the world. They have that deep-seated spiritual connection and loyalty that just can't be broken. People remember their families, they get separated, and even people who are adopted a lot of times will want to know, who are my parents when they get older and stuff like that. Family is super powerful. It's God's perfect form of government because it's rooted in love. You have total power. You have total power over your kids, basically. I mean, God gave you total power. He gave them to you. I mean, they can't even feed themselves. They come as little babies. He gives you total power, but he infuses you with love. So you use that power for your own children's betterment. The rules you make are for your own children's betterment, right? That was his system. It's got order, but it's infused with love. We don't have that in our government. I would say that even the people in government, their loyalty is still primarily to their family. And now we have people who rule us who have no interest in us, who have no family connection to us, who don't care. It's tyranny. It's tyranny. Okay. So what happened was, really quickly, guys, again, this is all a ramble. I'm going to get into this better later. But what happened is many people have tried to overthrow the power of family. Even in slave owners and stuff like that, they used to try to sell off the children, try to separate them as far as they could, because they realized even if family, it's tough. You either embrace the family and you say, all the kids live together, you are our family now, and you serve this family, and you'll have that too, where generations of slaves would serve one family, and it would become like a family unit. Or you try to break that family up because you realize if the kids are there, that slave that you're supposed to have authority over is still going to have that loyalty to that son, just like that general whose Cyrus's grandfather killed his son. Like, even though he was his subject, he still had his loyalty to his family. So family has always been dangerous for tyranny. It's extremely dangerous for the New World Order, which is trying to consolidate all power at the top in a few handful of families that run the world. They want all governments, all peoples, all families, all races under one government, which is ruled by them. Tiny little thing, okay? And so they tried to break this up. And they understood that anything that's powerful, like a gun, anything that's powerful for good is powerful for bad. And so we have instances of family where family can become horrible, just rip each other to pieces. You have Cain. Broke his mother's heart, broke his father's heart, killed his own brother, okay? So family is not always good. It can work against you. Stepmothers, okay? I know there's probably stepmothers watching. God bless you. If you were, literally, you're a saint if you're a stepmother, because God, and you love your children, your stepchildren like your own. God even says, like, who cares that you love your own kids, right? Like, that's just normal, okay? Even the pagans do that. But can you love other people's children? Because it's unnatural. It's very unnatural. And in our system, we have lots of broken families. We have stepmothers. Historically, stepmothers, there's a reason in all the Disney movies and all the old tales, like, stepmothers they were the evil ones. Like everybody, right? In all these old tales, it's almost always the evil witch stepmother, right? Why? Well, because you take that maternal instinct, which mothers are just so powerful. They love their own. I remember, C.S. Lewis was talking about how he made an interesting point. He said, if the neighbor's dog, okay, let's say if you have a dog and it bites the neighbor's kid, who do you want to talk to, the dad or the mom? And he's like, usually you talk to the dad because he's going to be like, but the mom's going to be like, she's going to be upset. You hurt her baby, okay? Mothers, they can be savage when it's in defense of their own children. And it's funny that C.S. Lewis said that story because that literally happened to me with a neighbor. And I love this lady. She's a sweetheart. But we had an issue with the dog and stuff like that. And yeah, she was very upset. So this is funny. It was in North Carolina. She didn't have children yet, but her dog was her baby and her dog hurt her dog. So anyway, but mothers can be ferocious. They're ferocious. If you look at the chickens and stuff, like the roosters and stuff, even like they kind of protect their own, but they kind of rule the roost. Like they're the authority over everybody, kind of overarching. But those mamas protect those chicks. And you know what's so funny about chickens is they're scared of everything. That's why we call them chickens. Oh, you're a chicken, right? They're scared of everything. Any noise like terrifies them. But man, as soon as they're broody, as soon as they have their babies or their eggs under them, I had a chicken jump up and peck me in the face because I was like trying to catch one of her little baby chicks. They're ferocious. Moms are ferocious, okay? You do not cross moms. Well, when you take stepmothers, God bless you if you're a stepmother, okay? I'm not trying to disparage you. I'm just trying to talk about the dynamic of family. When you take a stepmother, she has her own nest, her own babies. And you put her into another family, and you're like, oh, by the way, these kids that you didn't conceive, that are no relation to you, they're also your babies now. It's very hard for them to treat them the same. And historically, stepmothers, some of them have poisoned their children so that their kids could sit on the throne ahead of these other stepchildren. They have mistreated them. I mean, it's ferocious. And hurt a lot of people, and that's why they're always the evil one in in all of the stories, the old fairy tales and stuff. Not to disparage them, but again, God created that maternal instinct to be ferocious, an advocate for their own children. And that's why globalism, the public school doesn't work. There's no advocate. There's nobody in the classroom who's biased, who loves your kid the most. Okay, so every kid's kind of equal, and the teacher doesn't really care. She can't care like a mom cares about that one. But when you're the mom and all those other kids are on the sports field, you only care about your kid. That's the one you're watching. That's the one you love. That's the one you record. And you think, well, that's horrible. What about the other kids? Well, they have moms too. So it's work. Everybody has their own powerful advocate in the world. Okay, but it is a powerful advocate, and when it's set against each other, like a broken family with stepmothers and stuff like that, it can be destructive. Talk about the War of the Roses. I already talked about that a little bit. That was a family that was set against itself. It was the Plantagenet family. Basically, you had that oldest son, but this oldest son, before he became king, died. So his son is cut off from that line of kings, and it goes to the second oldest son. He becomes king. His family becomes king. But eventually, there's some turmoil, and they go back and say, well, what about the other brother? And it's this huge family feud, and this family's tearing each other apart. And then, of course, you have the New World Order. They had to take down Christendom, which is like a family. It's a kingdom. A Christ family, and of course they are going to advocate the Reformation. And I know most of us watching are like, oh, the Reformation's good. That's fine. It wasn't good. It may have been necessary. I'm not going to argue that or not, but it split the family of the church. It split the church, and you have these religious wars, and you have this tiny little minority, by the way, which we could talk about someday. This tiny little minority of banking families, and they are just totally overwhelmed by Christendom. Christendom has taken South America, North America, it runs all of Europe, it runs half of Asia through, and it's like starting to defeat the Muslims. It's going to take Africa. Christian was going to take over the whole world, and they're like, we can never compete with this force. They have all authority, all power, and they start agitating this break in the church, and they're going to get behind a guy, Martin Luther, and they're going to create this break. And you can love Martin Luther, you can be Protestant or Catholic. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just saying that it wasn't a good thing. I don't think it was what God intended for his church to be broken. It may have been necessary. You look at like the nation of Israel in the Old Testament when those 10 tribes broke away. I don't know that it could have not happened, but certainly it grieved God. That wasn't what he intended. He intended that family to stay together in those 12 tribes, and that nation split. And of course, the Assyrians took that away as punishment, and eventually the Babylonians would take that family away. God didn't mean for his families to get broken up. So that's what the church happened to the church, the beginning of the downfall. The church is set against itself. God's kingdom, God's family, brothers and sisters in Christ are put to war against each other. And the Protestants, and it's almost like 50-50. I mean, the power is so split. Nobody can win. They're set against each other, and then that's going to be the rise of the bankers. And that's an important thing. That goes back to wisdom, like in Aesop's fable. It's like, I actually wrote about it. I have him, instead of a fox, I have the vulture. But basically, you have this fox that's saying he wants to eat this big animal in the middle. Let's say an elephant. I don't know what it is. But he has no chance of taking this down. So what does he do? He tells the lion about it. He tells the bear about it. And they come, and the lion comes, and he rips this thing to pieces. Or maybe it's the lion's already eaten the elephant or something. The fox wants the meal. So what does he do? Does he come up and challenge the lion? He has no chance. He goes and he tells another lion, or he tells a bear, hey, there's this meal there. You just have to go take it from the lion. While those two just tear each other to pieces, equal powers, just ripping each other to pieces, the fox feasts. In fact, they kill each other, right? Or they mortally wound each other. Now the fox is king. He has no right to be king. That's what happened with Christendom. It was split in two. This family, they tore each other to pieces. And then this small evil rose in the world and toppled all the governments in the world. And now there's not a single nation that's Christian. And we are run by this satanic evil entity. We don't even know what it is. We think that this is our government. This is democracy. This is our government. But you look at our government, like what they're promoting. It's funny because they're also promoting that in this country, in this country, in this country, in this country. You think all those countries are independently run? And all at the same time they start promoting transgenderism and homosexuality and stuff like that? Of course not. There is a web. It goes back to a few families who are creating the New World Order. And so they promote these in all the governments that they run. Okay, so anyway, public education. So it was really important to these guys to take down family. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. And when they take over the Soviet Union, it's the first time, like, they took down their nemesis. Like, they hate the Russians. If you know the history, these people hate the Russians. They're not communists, by the way. If you've watched my other videos, it's not communists who took down Russia, of course. That's just one of their isms. It's just one of their names. But of course, it's the international bankers. And they take down Russia, and Russia's our arch enemy. They're going to make Russia pay. But immediately when they come to power, we see finally they have a government of their own. They're not undermining a Christian government. They're not like in some of the governments, like in France, they toppled it, but they didn't have enough control. So Napoleon rose to power, and he almost became like the new monarch, and they had to take him down. And they never really had absolute power. But when they take down Russia, they have absolute power. And then they unmask themselves. Who are they? We see that they are Satanists, and they blow up the churches, and they're just evil, evil people, right? But immediately they attack the family. They introduce these new concepts that pretty much are illegal in all the world, even in pagan nations, okay? It's very interesting. The first thing is this new concept of no-fault divorce. It basically takes marriage and says it's nothing. The union of marriage is zero. It's non-existent. Like, you can get married in form. We can't stop that because there's such a tradition here. But legally speaking, your marriage means nothing. No-fault divorce means you could leave your husband or your spouse for any reason, for no reason. You could leave them because they're ugly, because they're old. So you could be a man, maybe you're rich, you're powerful, things are going well for you, and you got this wife who's born you 7 kids, and she doesn't look as hot anymore, and you've got money, and you could just pick up an 18-year-old, and that could legitimately be your reason for dumping your wife, because marriage means nothing in the Soviet Union. That's no-fault divorce. So it absolutely devastates the family in Russia, just totally devastates it. You have all these single mothers who are being abandoned. They have all these children and stuff. It's so devastating. That was started in the Soviet Union immediately. That's who these people are. They hate the family. And of course, immediately they want public education. They understand it has to be public, it has to be free, it has to be for the masses, and it has to be mandatory because we need to get these children out of the home. Okay, we can't have these families raising them anymore. We need to break that loyalty. We'll put them in the home. We'll raise them in our image. And eventually, hopefully, if we do it well, these children will turn on the parents. They will be children of the state. But it's not the state. It's the children of the New World Order because the state is nothing. It's just the middleman. That's not who's really running it. They'll be their children. And that happens, by the way. That happens, and even today, I'm seeing this all the time on social media. There was the riots, let's say, whatever they were, in the Capitol, right? You had these parents going there, they're Trump supporters, they go into the Capitol. Tons of their own children came out and were denouncing them. And the New World Order is celebrating this in the media, that they're heroes and they're so principled. But these are children of the New World Order denouncing their own parents to the government. Some of these people were going to go to prison and stuff. No sense of loyalty. Gosh, you want to talk about Christians being taken down by their own children, you got to hear about the Janissaries, and that's probably one of the most tragic stories in history. That is basically the slave trade for a long time. Someday I'll talk about slavery and how it became racial and stuff like that, but it really had to do with religions. You have basically Africa and the Middle East, which is dark people, but they're Muslim and they're Jewish, and the Muslims pass a law that you can't enslave another Muslim. You can only enslave like people of different faith. And they also Jews. You can't enslave Jews because those are a team. By the way, they're one. We'll talk about that someday. That makes no sense to people today looking at Palestine and Israel like, huh? Okay, historically, the Jews and the Arabs are one. Islam is, they're good allies against Christendom. So, but the Janissaries, so they would go into Europe, they would take white Christian children because they're Christian, and they would make them slaves. And these Janissaries were basically little boys who were taken as children. The Muslim army would castrate them so they couldn't have a family of their own. And from the time they were little babies, they were raised to be elite, like stormtroopers, like special forces soldiers. And eventually they have this huge Janissary army. And that's how they take down Constantinople, which had become the capital of Christendom after the fall of Rome. Constantinople, right? The Orthodox Church. The Byzantine Empire, the Holy Roman Empire at that point, the Byzantines, right? They're taken down by their own children that were made eunuchs and made to serve as adopted children of the Muslims. Horrible, horrible story. But that's what the public schools are doing. They're creating Janissaries. They're taking our own children and turning them against our own faith, our own families, and they're weaponizing our own children. I look at kids in my own family, not personally, but my extended family. And so many of their kids are graduating high school and then attacking the faith that their parents had, attacking their parents, promoting all this degeneracy, everything that you're seeing. And it's like, man, the New World Order did a great job raising those children. Like, we will be persecuted by our own children if we don't get this. And that's why homeschooling is so important. Okay, but they want to take down family. Another aspect is sex, of course. So they started introducing prostitution and pornography, ways to have sex outside of the marriage relationship. They started normalizing adultery. Adultery is not a crime. In our system, you can commit adultery. No issue. There's no law. The state doesn't care about your family, the integrity of your family. You can do anything you want to your spouse. The only grounds they have is to leave you, to break up the family. That's the only solution. There's no other remedy that the state offers anymore. Okay, that started in the Soviet Union, no-fault divorce. Of course, it came to America with Ronald Reagan, that piece of garbage that everybody thinks is a conservative. He's not. He's a New World Order, horrible, horrible president. One of the most liberal, one of the most horrible presidents. Okay, I've talked about him in other videos. The Bushes, they're all the same. The Bushes, Obamas. I don't know about Trump, but all the rest are the same. And Reagan, of course, I guess he wasn't the one to first introduce no-fault divorce. I think he was like the second state to do it, I believe. But of course, he's governor of California, introduces no-fault divorce, following the communist lead. Think about that. The communists do it, the Soviet Union, we follow their lead over here. Another of the darlings of the New World Order, because they're Satanists and they hate the family, they're trying to destroy it, is abortion. Abortion is legal basically in all the world. As far as I know, even in the pagan countries. It's certainly illegal in every Christian country, which is South America, North America, all of Europe. It's illegal everywhere. Abortion is murder. You don't murder the innocents. The New World Order loves that. And they introduced abortion in Russia immediately following the Soviet takeover. It's like their baby. Abortion, no-fault divorce, public education to break up the family. And of course, Ronald Reagan, I think he was the first governor in America to legalize abortion on demand. So, yeah, but all that was to destroy the family, to make the family weak. Hopefully you won't have a lot of kids. You'll have one kid, so you know what I mean? So in other words, you don't have a strong, the Bible talks about, like arrows in the hand of a warrior. Your children are your power. It's strength. But if you only have one or you have none, I mean, and if the state raises them and they raises them to hate your religion, that's all turned against you. So that was all part of the New World Order agenda. We're seeing this more and more. Parental authorities being undermined by the state. They want to strip us of all. They're giving us discipline tactics that don't work. They call it positive parenting, but basically they're stripping parents of the ability to discipline their children. They're taking away corporal punishment. They want to ban that as abuse. And so the parents will have zero grounds to discipline and raise their own children. Yeah, so this war on family. And so when you see these feminists, you got to remember what feminism was. Of course, they created all these isms. They would create movements to break up nations, to break up families, to break up other structures of power, right? So one of them is race. Historically, race is just family, extended family, right? So you have the Franks, right? But they're actually, the Franks are like a family, but then they're tied to the Germanic tribes, which are all kind of a family of Caucasians, and they take down the Italians, who are kind of the olive-skinned, and then you have the Africans, and there are different family and ethnicities within Africa, but there's a common family identity. So they want to break that up by setting they put the race, they mix the races, and they set them up against each other to kind of tear down that barrier. They do it against the religions. They say all religions are equal. They put them together, and then they kind of break each other apart, and so that no religion is practiced. They did it with the man and wife. They took away the structure. Christendom recognized headship and authority in the father figure, and that even goes to the Trinity. You have a Trinity that you're co-equal. Jesus is equal to the Father and the Holy Spirit. They're all one God. There's no hierarchy there. There's no greater God, right? They're all co-equal, tri-equal, I guess, tri-equal gods. Tri-equal God. Trinity is tough. But there is a headship. And in the family, there's a headship, which is given, and it's a responsibility given to the man. That was another thing that they worked so hard to tear down, the headship of the family. And in our country, the father has no authority. And if he tries to exert any authority, he could be in big trouble. I mean, he has no authority in his family. They're trying to do that to parents now. That's the new movement, is to make sure that parents have no real authority over their children. And they're doing that with transgenderism. So if your kid, let's say your kid is sleeping around right now. You say, no, you're not going to go sleep with your boyfriend. You're staying here, right? You can control that. But through transgenderism and homosexuality, they're making it hate crimes. So even if you were to say, hey, I don't want my straight children sleeping around, so I have these rules. If you were to say that to a homosexual child, right, that could be a hate crime because you're against the homosexuality. So they're breaking, and that's how they're going to start working to break down the authority, saying you can't tell your child this. That's a hate crime. They're going to keep pushing it. They're going to start with homosexuality and the transgenderism. You won't be able to have any authority, any say over that, and the state's going to assume more and more. They'll take away a right to discipline. The next authority they're trying to break up is in the family, is parents. They've already undermined us with public education and all sorts of different laws and programming and the media and fashion, all sorts of things. They're meant to separate the children from the parents, but the final one will be actually authority. They want to remove all of authority, so all authority is invested in the state. But of course, it's not really invested in the state. It's not statism. It's invested in the few families that control the states, the governments of the world. So anyway, guys, I don't know if that was helpful. That was a long-winded ramble. It's so much more than that, guys. And sometimes I say things and I feel like they're so out there that you guys be like, I don't know, I don't buy it. Of course, if you read my books, I outline this perfectly. I outline this perfectly. I set it up. I set up the case. I set up the history. It's very hard to argue after you read the book, but sometimes I'm in the ramble. Maybe it does sound a little far-fetched. And the other thing I was going to get with feminism, this attack on mothers, okay? I think that's the last one. The goal of what I'm going to call the New World Order, and when we use that because we don't want to identify these families, I will say the goal of the New World Order, it is religious, by the way. I totally believe in Revelation. After like studying the history, like, oh my God, it's setting it up. You are going to have an Antichrist. You're going to have a slaughter of Christians. Like, you can see it's coming. You can see it's building. Like, these people hate us, and it's deep, and it's religious, and it's spiritual. It's a spiritual hate. It's demonic. But one of the things was the woman served the family. So did the fathers, by the way. But the first thing they did with the fathers is they made them the breadwinners, and they were bringing home the bacon, and they would do all that as kind of propaganda to get the fathers out there. And basically, the father became the head breadwinner of the family. The mom kind of ran things, but he was the breadwinner. They got him out of the home. He's pursuing income outside of the home. He's working for the man, the corporations and stuff, the bankers that run everything. Okay, and they got him out of the home. They dealt with him. He has no authority. His wife or girl, whatever, could kill the Trinity, could kill the third member of the Trinity. His son, his daughter, unborn daughter, he has no say in it. Fathers are despised in our society, totally despised. They hate the father because he's the head of the family. They hate him. He has no power. If he raises his voice to his wife now, I mean, it can be verbal abuse. Everything is geared against the father. And then you wonder why no men want to get married. It's because he's just been totally stripped, totally demoralized by the court system. I mean, think about this. You have a Trinity, a man, a wife, the child. That Trinity was broken up at the state for me when I was, I guess, like 7 years old. And I was separated from my father by the state, by law. And I got to see my father every 14 days, every other weekend, every other holiday. So I went from seeing him every day to seeing him every 14 days or 12 days. And I got saw him for 2. That's contempt for fatherhood. That's contempt. You're saying fathers don't matter. And I think the judge, the rule, and I talk about this in the book, it took me that's the only person I've really hated. It took me a long time to stop hating that judge who separated our family. Anyway, I forget what I was going to say with it, but, you go from being with your father every day, and you need your father. You have a spiritual connection to your father. And, the judge, he said this thing that I just really hated him for, but he said that for the sense of stability, it was more important that we were stable, that we could go to the same school district, and just have stability in the home. And that's why my dad got to see us every 2 weeks for 2 days. Because stability was more important than having my access to my father. So, yeah, that's probably the only person I've ever deeply hated was that judge. I've never met him. But anyway, yeah, they've totally destroyed the fathers, the mothers. So now they've been after the mothers for a long time. Mothers have probably a stronger sense of maternal instinct. Mothers, they try so hard with the media in these movies and try so hard to propagandate mothers. But as soon as she carries that baby in her womb and has that baby, it all goes out the window. All of her training goes out the window. It's very frustrating. So the New World Order is working very hard to make sure that women can't stay home. Okay, originally it was a choice, and they told women, you're going to get out there and work for the man, and you're going to have more money for your family, and your kids are going to be better off, and you're going to send them to better schools anyway. And they encourage these women to go outside of the home. Now, it was a huge shot because what actually it did is it doubled the labor force overnight, and basically it took the wages of their own husbands and it brought it down. And so now it takes a husband and a wife, usually, out of high school anyway, to make a living to support the family. It's very hard for a single man to support the family because we have such a huge labor pool, right? They're competing with their own wives now. Anyway, I talk about that in the book. It was genius how they did it. And then, of course, they created public education so that the mother wouldn't have to stay home and the capitalists wouldn't have to pay for childcare to get the mother into work, so they get her for cheap labor, and then the taxpayers would fund for her daycare, which is public education. But they want the mother out. They want her creating capital for the capitalists, and then taxable income for the socialist. So her money will now be taxed for the state, and then a good chunk of it will go to making profit for the capitalists and for GDP and growing the nation state, the New World Order. But she will have very little time to work on her own family, and that was by design. And now a lot of mothers, originally they said it was a choice, but now a lot of mothers can't choose to stay home because it's so expensive living, and their husbands can't make a living wage by design, and so they have to go get jobs, and they've broken it up, and now it's no longer a choice. But I know so many mothers who believe all the feminist stuff, and they want to go out career and all this stuff, and they believe that being, I guess, a secretary to some whatever, or even being a doctor, is more glorious than the baby. Then they have that baby, and it's all All the propaganda goes out the window and they love that baby. They still believe it for other people. They still believe in feminism for other people, but they're like, for me, I want to stay home with my baby. Usually that happens, not often. But that's why they're always disparaging mothers. And their goal is to get mothers out of the home. Their goal is to get the concept of mother away. And that's what they're doing with transgenderism. They're saying that, even the idea of motherhood because tied to gender is offensive. And they're trying to break all that down. And eventually the goal will be, we already know what it is. If you've read Plato's Republic, there will be no family. There will be no concept of family. You'll have breeding grounds. That's literally, this goes all the way back. This is pagan. This is going all the way back to the Republic. And the state that they're creating right now is Plato's Republic, where you have a few guardians and the power is hidden, but the people think that they have a vote. It's all in Plato's Republic. He talks about this. And you have breeding grounds, and you'd actually have breeding rights, and they're going to do that with climate change and stuff like that. They'll say, well, we have so much population control. We have to have breeding rights, so we'll have like a lottery. And if you win the lottery, you can go breed with somebody and have a kid. But even in Plato's Republic, they said that they would take the kid at birth, even not even letting the mother see the child, so that they would never know that that was their child, so that everybody would be everybody's children, okay, if that should sound familiar. And they'll do this New World Order. They come up with this stuff like global warming, and it gives them the vehicle to say, this is why we have to have this tyranny. There's overpopulation in the world, so women can't have babies, so we'll make it fair. We'll have a lottery, and then they'll have a rigged lottery like a rigged election. And they'll start... Oh gosh, it's horrible. And eventually the goal is that there will be no concept of family. Maybe your kid will be born in a petri dish and you won't even know who it is. You'll be a sperm and egg donor. And that is the New World Order's agenda. It's purely satanic. It goes all the way back to the Tower of Babel. Most people don't understand that story because some books were removed from the Bible. Not during the Reformation, actually. Luther kept them in the Bible. The King James Bible kept them in the Bible. They were removed like in the 1800s with the Second Reformation, but there's the Book of Solomon. He talks about this. And what the sin was at Babel. They didn't just want to build a tower, okay? They were building these pyramids, which you see all over the world. It's a cult, and now you see it under money. It's the same cult, but it was to create a one world government. And that's why God broke up the languages and separated them, and they're trying to bring it back together. And then there will be no family. There will just be one ruling class. Gosh, I could go on and on. That'll be the final book that I write. I'm tying this all together. It's so confusing. You think it's all this independent things, these histories. It's not. It's almost like a bloodline. It's almost crazy. You have like a bloodline of Christ, and you have this other bloodline, and it's satanic, and it's the same thing. It's the same goddesses. It's the same. It's crazy. Like we have, Lady Liberty in our harbor. And she stands for freedom to us. We have no idea what that is, and that's an ancient goddess going all the way back to the Babylonians, Tower of Babel and stuff. Gosh, and it's so crazy how it all fits together. It really makes you believe in your faith, because Lady Liberty that we all worship in our harbor is also Astarte, which is the star god, or Ishtar, the star god, which is the stars on all of our flags. She's also called Venus, like the planet Venus, and that's the morning star. The first star you see in the morning, the first star you see at night, and that is, of course, what we'd call Lucifer. So it's just a different name in all these different religions. But basically, when you connect it all, you're like, oh my God, Lucifer's in the harbor, and we all love Lucifer, Liberty. And I think it's Cicero. Gosh, I wish I would have wrote it down. I think it's Cicero calls Lady Liberty the mother of whores, because temple worship was tied to prostitution. Her temple worship was tied to prostitution, and they said that she was the mother of prostitution. That's who's in her harbor. It's not a conspiracy. It's all tied together. You can track it together. I think I've done a video on that. It's very fascinating. It grows your faith. You're like, oh my goodness. And then you see all these Disney movies and they worship the stars and the dreams. The star god comes in your dreams, and you got to star bright, star white, all these things, gosh, that are come together, these songs and stuff like that. When you really look at the lyrics, like they all talk about this star. You got to follow the star, the inner voices, and follow your dreams. And of course, Liberty or Ishtar, the star god, comes to you in your dreams and sets a path for you, and you just have to follow the dreams, follow the path. It's an ancient cult. It's an ancient religion, a cult. It's an ancient religion, and it's very modern today, and it's going to destroy everything that's godly. It wants to take the family, the Trinity that makes us in the image of God, and destroy it. And then it promises to make us a God. And we'll be independent gods. We won't need a family. We'll be able to reproduce within ourselves through science, the vehicle of science. That's the God. And we'll have eternal life. They're working on eternal life. They'll be able to grow limbs for you and all of this stuff. And basically at some point you'll have to choose. I don't know how to go, but I guess between death, because you believe that there's a heaven and a greater glory, or maybe eternal life here. I don't know. I don't know if God will ever let them achieve that. But I believe in Revelation talks about how in the end times they will unravel the mysteries of the universe. And of course, that was originally in the Garden of Eden. You will become like God. I'll give you the knowledge of good and evil. You'll become like God. And we've been on that quest for man providing his own salvation, which will be the Antichrist. We'll believe that we will no longer need God. We can give ourselves eternal life. We can protect ourselves through science and psychology and medicine. And man will create his own utopia, and he will perfect himself without God. And so you have these two lines. You look at the Tower of Babel. I'm way off topic. You look at the Tower of Babel. That was the mission. Of course, that's Nimrod, which we consider stupid now. But his son dies, and he's just angry at God for destroying the world with the flood. And he's like, we're going to make war on God, and man will rage against God and create his own salvation. He'll become his own God. And that is what the movement is, the New World Order. It's the movement to become God. It's the same as the Garden of Eden. It's we will give ourselves eternal life. We will give ourselves all wisdom, all knowledge, all understanding, and eternal life. We'll restore eternal life, what God took from us. And of course, God will say, okay, like it's the beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. And it's just foolishness, that we think we can take on God, but that's what the movement is. So anyway, guys, I don't know. I go on tangents. That was everywhere. Hopefully you got something out of that, but I want you to understand that family is powerful. Family is the antithesis to the New World Order, the secret societies, and we are more powerful if we unite our families. But if we continue to follow these teachings of the New World Order, if we believe in no-fault divorce, and we send our kids to public education, and we promote abortion on demand, and we allow prostitution, and because that's coming, that's coming. That'll be here in 5 minutes. You'll see, it's coming. It's the next thing. Prostitution. Pornography. If we allow these things that were meant to destroy the family, then you will. Your family will become the worst nightmare. And you'll be like men today. They don't even want to get married anymore because they were raised in that. They saw what happened to their dads and losing the kids and the violence and the hatred. Because when you take two people who are meant to be together for life and you have the family, they've created the Trinity. They've created a human being in their image together. And you separate that. There's usually animosity. And it goes from love almost to hatred, and that is by design. So it's really important we educate our children about family, guys. All the reading, the writing, the history, that's cool, that's interesting, but your kids have to understand family. That's more important, probably one of the most important things. And I don't think anybody teaches their kid about family anymore. I don't think anybody knows about it anymore. They believe so many lies. They've made women think it's dangerous to have a husband as a head figure, but it's okay to have the state. And this is so ironic because let's say a husband puts his hands on his wife. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just saying let's say it happens. That's a crime. He can go to jail for that, even if the woman doesn't want to press charges. But let's say the cops come, and let's say that they're men. And let's say that in this whole mix-up, the woman becomes rebellious, and she doesn't obey the state, the cops, and she argues with him, and she defies their orders, okay? They'll become an abusive husband. I mean, that's what's so crazy. They will lay hands on her. They will thump her if they need to. They'll spray her with mace. They'll electrocute her to get compliant. So the state believes, you see what I'm saying? The state believes in their authority. They just don't believe in the husband having any. And I probably just opened a can of worms. I'm not saying that that's okay either way. I'm just saying that the state believes in their own authority. And it's not the state. It's the New World Order that controls the states. They believe in their authority. They believe in violence. But they're teaching two different... Oh, gosh, I'm going to open another can of worms. I've already talked about that. Anyway, they're doing everything that they can to make the relationship between man and woman and mother, father, and child impossible, even a source of contention. So where your kids become your worst enemies. It's funny, the family I grew up in was very broken. And I remember I was having a bunch of kids. I think I was on my 5th or 6th kid. I remember he's my brother. He's adopted. I remember him being like, be careful, Britton, be careful. And I'm like, what do you mean? But in his mind, he's like, you're having all these kids. And like in his concept, family destroys each other, tears each other apart. We come from a very broken family. He's like, be careful. You're like, almost like you're creating all these little enemies, these little adversaries. I'm like, dude, that's not the way family's supposed to work. If I raise these kids properly, they're going to be my best friends. They're going to be my allies. They'll be they've got my back when the New World Order comes for me. That's what family is. But it's funny how it's been transformed in people's minds, where family is despicable. You talk about God being the father, and the preacher or the priest has to stop and say, oh, but it's not like, you may come from broken homes. It's not like that abusive father you had or that abusive, husband you had or something like that, because our families are so broken. They can't, oh man. Anyway. All right, I'm done. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. If you guys have questions about family, let me know. That'll be in the next book. Guys, it's going to inspire you. It inspired me writing the book. The family is so powerful. It is so powerful. It will take down the New World Order if we restore it to its former glory. Gosh, it is exciting. And we have all of these different powers that God gave us, and we just have to put ourselves back in touch with them. So hope that inspires you guys. If you guys are stay-at-home moms, you have a huge privilege. I'm a stay-at-home dad now. I get to work from home. I envy stay-at-home moms. I think that the reason, and that's why they twist everything in the New World Order. They twist everything. They make it like you were staying home because you were an outcast and you weren't respected and you didn't have the opportunity to work. It was because Christendom respected motherhood and said, listen, like, there's nothing more important than raising the children. So let's have the husband, if somebody's got to go out of the home and dig trenches in a coal mine, because it used to be very brutal before technology, right? Working outside of the home. Let's have the husband do it. As the leader of the house, he'll do it. And let's keep that sacred bond between the mother and the child together, and she'll raise that child, because nobody nurtures a kid, loves a kid like a mother. That's just a fact. And that's what the truth was, but they want to twist that and make it look like men controlled it and they were saving all the cool jobs, stuff for themselves, where you were a slave to the family, and they just twist it and make motherhood look like drudgery and evil, but actually it's beautiful. You're going to raise champions. You can raise up a king. It's amazing. It's amazing. My mom is a teacher, and I shouldn't use my mom. I know teachers, and they teach in the school system, and they don't even get to follow the kid. They teach them for 1 year, and then they lose that connection. And it's not fulfilling. You educate a little bit, and it's like a conveyor belt, and you don't see the kid again. You don't stay with them. You have so many classes. There's no personal relationship. It's very unfulfilling. But you get to raise that kid from the time they're a little nugget all the way up until they become a grown man or woman. And that's rewarding if you do a good job. It's so exciting to see that. It's so exciting to see my kids' achievements. It's fulfilling. Just remember that that's propaganda, and these people hate family, and they're trying to discourage you. They're trying to break you down and think that, your job is menial. You're a slave. Your work is drudgery. Join the workforce where you can be pushing papers or selling something or what? Stocking shelves, taking orders, like that's glorious. But at least you'll get a paycheck or something like that. They want you to believe that is glorious. Come on. Motherhood is glorious. So is fatherhood. All right. I'm really done this time. Thank you guys so much. Ask questions if you have them. Next week, I have a huge surprise. Hopefully. Huge announcement. I'll probably be in a new location, and we may have a studio. But we'll see. It's exciting. Things are happening. I'll talk to you guys later.